Welcome to Module 1. My name is Haley at SafeWorks Solutions, and I will be your guide through this module, which is about creating a behavior-based solution, or BBS card. This module will cover all of the steps you need to know in order to complete a new BBS card. When you get to the program's homepage, use either the pull-down menu located at the upper left-hand corner of the page to access the program modules, or you can use the module icons located on the home page itself. So let's access the behavior-based solution. Across the top of the BBS homepage, you can see that you can start a new BBS card, access the past cards that you've created, you have access to the dashboard, and if you have the capability to run reports, you can do that here. Also on the homepage, you will see two graphics. To the left of the page is a graph that represents the BBS count for this month versus the target for each of these Berry Brother fields. If you hover over the bar, you will see the target number versus the actual number of BBS. The Berry Brothers corporate expectation is that each user produces at least 2 quality BBS observations per month in order to get the proper utilization from the program. To the right, there is a graph that represents the card count leaders for the last 6 months. At the bottom of the page, you have a message board and you also have a documents section. There are currently 3 items available in the documents section. One is a document that gives an overview of the BBS program. And then you have an English and a Spanish version of the print version of the BBS card available to download. So let's begin by creating a new BBS or behavior-based solution card. So first we would select New BBS Card. That's going to open up the New BBS Card page. Across the top, you will have what we call our location information. You have the customer, you have the work site, and it's important that you choose the location where you are working. The next drop-down menu has to do with the hazard activity. There are 14 high-risk activity types that are common through the program's modules. If the activity falls into one or more categories, please choose the most significant activity. Next, we have the date. The date will automatically default to the current date. You may go back to input data for a prior event, but it is important to stress that you can only enter events for the current calendar month. So, for example, today's date is the 27th. You will be unable to go back and enter an observation that occurred in the month of December. Also, once you save your first BBS card, the location information with customer, worksite, and location will automatically save and reappear when you begin your next card. You will only need to reselect the hazard activity from the list. Let's go on to observation. Here you can see that we have a text box where you can enter a task that you were completing. So for example, you can enter doing hot work in a confined space. The next step is to select whether the activity was covered under a JSEA, or Job Safety Environmental Analysis. JSEA is the process that is done before a job is begun, which consists of a walkthrough of the steps and potential hazards associated with that job. So you would either select yes, it was covered, or no, it wasn't. The next question is, was an unsafe condition observed? If you hover over unsafe condition, a definition will appear. At this point, it's important to distinguish between an unsafe condition versus an unsafe behavior. An unsafe condition is an unsatisfactory physical condition existing in a workplace environment that varies from a normally accepted safe condition and can result in injury, death, property damage, or environmental harm if not reported and corrected properly. An unsafe condition is something that the individual cannot control through his own action, and it requires that a corrective action process be initiated. An unsafe behavior, however, is something that is under the control of the individual, but no imminent danger is present. An unsafe behavior is best managed through a BBS card. So let's go back to the program and complete a few examples. So for example, we observe that an employee is not wearing protective eyewear when completing a task. We have to ask ourselves, was an unsafe condition observed? We would select no. And that is because this is a behavior which was based on a person's choice rather than a condition. So now we can go into our observations in these 7 categories and make our appropriate selections. So the individual was not wearing the proper protective eyewear equipment. So we could then go into personal protective equipment and select that option. Here we have a list of behaviors. We can see eye and face protective equipment, and we know that that was at risk because the employee was not wearing the proper eyewear. So we could choose at risk. If you choose that a behavior is at risk, you will then have this question appear. Why was the behavior at risk? You must select a barrier. So if we open the barrier list, we can choose the option that is most appropriate for the situation. So which barrier prevented that behavior from being safe? And an example is a personal factor or choice. When you select that barrier, a definition of the selection that you made will appear so you can understand if it best suits why that behavior was at risk. So then we would scroll down and answer the questions that have appeared. Was intervening feedback or constructive feedback provided to encourage the use of safe behavior? We could say yes. Was the at-risk behavior corrected? We could say yes. And was a stop work authority used? No. If you have any comments that you need to add, you can type those into these text box. Now if we go to Save BBS Card, you can see that we now have a green flag. The BBS card has been saved, so you know that everything you've entered is saved in the system and it's good to go. You can also notice that the BBS card has been assigned a number. This number will help you identify this particular BBS card in your listing of saved BBS cards. So let's create a second card utilizing another example. So I will go back to New BBS Card. You can see Berry Brothers, and the location that I selected have been saved. I do need to go back and reselect a new activity. And then again, my date has defaulted to the current day's date. I can enter my observation, which let's say we observed an employee was operating a forklift with no seatbelt on, and that there was a large crack in the floor that we found. So again, we go back to, was the activity covered under the JSEA? And we can say again, either yes or no. Then, was an unsafe condition observed? We have to answer yes or no. And we can say that an unsafe condition was observed because there was an at-risk environmental feature that was out of the employee's control, which was that crack in the floor. So notice when you select yes, this corrective action tab appears. A corrective action is required for all the unsafe conditions that you observe. So we have to go into this corrective action tab. It's then going to ask us a few questions. We need to describe the issue. So you could type in whatever you observe there. Okay. You have to address, did you correct the issue? You would select yes or no. And then what did you do or what still needs to be done to correct the issue? So you could say something like, put up a safety barrier. Whatever you did to correct it or whatever still needs to be done to correct it. I want to point out that there is a risk meter on the right side of the page right here. If you click on this question mark icon, it's going to open up the risk matrix. The risk matrix discusses how to assign risk on this meter. So you can take a look at the matrix, decide the risk level, And then you can simply move the toggle to assign risk. If you have an image of the hazard, you can upload it and save that along with your BBS card. So we can upload the image, and this is just an example image that I have. And we're going to open it, and then it shows you the image right here on the page. If you need to add additional corrective actions, you can do that as well. And also, if you want to add any observations behavior-wise, you can do that also. So we said that the employee was operating the forklift with no seatbelt. So we need to note that as an at-risk behavior. So we could go into, for example, vehicle operations, find our behavior for seatbelt, notate that it's at risk. Again, we need to select our barrier as to why the behavior was at risk. So we can, for example, select policy and procedure, and then we'll get the definition for that. And then we have our questions again at the bottom. Now we can go ahead and save this BBS card. And if you have not answered all of the questions, it's important to remember that you will get this red flag notice that says all required questions must be answered. So we need to go through and answer this. Was intervening feedback or constructive feedback provided? So we can again go through and answer these questions. And we can save our BBS card. And now that we've answered everything that we're required to, again, you have your green flag notice saying that the BBS card has been saved, and here is the number for that BBS card. So once you've entered in BBS cards, let's say you want to go back and access one that you entered in the past. You can then go to My BBS Cards, and you can see that we have the card numbers that I discussed and showed you. You have your activity, your details, you have all the information you need, and you can go back in and access those cards. So you could choose it. It comes right back up. You can go in, it's going to load it, and you can view every card that you've entered. So this concludes the video tutorial on creating a BBS card. If you have any questions on how to create a card or how to enter your data, please see your supervisor or your safety representative, and they can instruct you on the proper procedure.